Welcome to Future Tech Talk. I'm your pilot, Nolan Michaels. This is episode 27, I believe. Congrats to everyone who's joined me so far. It is finally a sunny day down here at the ballpark, and that is just so exciting. It brings so much life to Toronto, and it's just the best background for talking about the dystopian world we currently live in. I mean, there's a lot to talk about, and I'm not sure if I can spend too much time on any one thing. Maybe it's because I'm not the brightest bulb on the Christmas tree, and I don't exactly know how to go into detail into a bunch of things. Okay, where could we start? You know, one of the scariest aspects of AI and technology as a whole is that it's just not going to stop. I don't think people in the year 2000, even with the internet, I don't think they could have predicted what life was like right now and the things that we have access to. And I'm curious if they thought, well, that's the best it's going to get. Let's just all enjoy what we have right now. It's not going to get any crazier. Sort of the same way we think about things today, as in just in the sense of being happy with what you have and thinking, oh, well, this is good enough. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I am worried. Maybe worried's not the right word, but I've seen a lot more talk about mind reading, being able to interpret thoughts through AI, through the use of new technologies, maybe AI being one of them, when it helps us read signals that a human might not be able to interpret on their own, which is probably where all technology should stay. I don't think humans should be doing things that we can't do on our own. And I've heard this in the sense of when we think of words, apparently maybe it's something in our ear vibrates in the way that we were to speak it, in the same way that we were going to speak it. So if you just measure the vibrations, you can calculate and extrapolate what the word was going to be. And I know there's already quite a bit of use cases for controlling things with your brain, sending signals with your brain to a controller and having that controller be mapped to certain movements. And this is amazing for anyone with disabilities, paraplegics. Being able to communicate with our brains is such a monumentous achievement for leveling out humanity, leveling out in the good way, raising the floor of what people are capable of, making sure nobody ever gets left behind, especially in terms of their ability to communicate. However, if that kind of world is accepted, how is it going to be turned on everybody else? Are you going to be able to opt in to having your mind be read? Can you opt out? Is it going to be on by default? If your phone could read your mind, and by all accounts, it probably already can in some ways. I don't think anyone really understands how these algorithms work and how you could literally just be thinking about a product and then you'll see an advertisement for it. Now, I want to state right now, I know the one argument is that you've already been primed for these advertisements. That's where your thought came from. Input your original thought, which you thought was stage one, but no, you already missed stage one. You weren't aware of stage one happening. You have your thought, then you see the advertisement, and you weren't aware that you were funneled into that ad and thinking about that product. Now, that's the argument. I don't necessarily agree with that argument because there's certainly been times where it's happened to me and it didn't feel like I was primed in any way. And the fact that our phones are 100% listening to us, let me just give you an example. I'll tell you exactly what happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I was playing video games with a friend online and we were chatting and we were having a silly conversation about, like, if you had a small lump sum of money, and small is relative. It was like, if you had $80,000, if you won $80,000, what would you do with it in the next year? Would you go to every major sporting event, front row seats to the World Series, to the Super Bowl? Would you buy season tickets to see your favorite team and just go to every home game? Would you go on a bunch of vacations and just travel for the year? Would you buy a nice car? Like, did you, we're not talking Ferraris and Lamborghinis, but some sort of some sort of dream car you've always wanted, like a car from the Fast and the Furious or some souped up, slick looking sports car. What would you do with 80,000? I don't have $80,000 to spare. Like, this was the most theoretical, hypothetical. If you won a small amount of money, how would you spend it in your immediate future? I got advertisements the next day for Cadillacs. These stupid. I really try not to swear. I'm not going to swear, but it makes me angry. These companies, these phones, these algorithms are so dumb. They're brilliantly smart, but they're so dumb. They thought I could afford a Cadillac. They spent their advertising budget targeting me, saying, "Hey, you could get a Cadillac this Christmas." Are you that? We were having a conversation about something that wasn't true, and my phone clearly heard me. There was no priming me to make me think about Cadillacs and then show me the Cadillac. Like, that argument is absolutely not true. A hypothetical situation was brought up. A lot of car brands were discussed, and Cadillac wasn't one of them, to be fair. It was like Acuras and BMWs, and like, there's that BMW from the Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol movie that I fell in love with from the moment I saw it. And I know it's that like white and blue and silver one, and it just looks so, oh my god, it's like the coolest thing I've ever seen in relation to everything else that had existed up until that point. Does that make any sense? Like, seeing that car in 2012 or whenever it was like, oh my god, this can exist. This, somebody can have this car. It seemed too good to be true. And I remember always thinking, like, as good as this car looks in commercials and in the movie, if you saw this car on the street of Toronto or any city and it was beside other literally normal looking cars, the BMW would stand out in such a weird way. Like, it really only looks perfect in isolation. Anyways, my phone was clearly listening to me because it thought I wanted a really nice car, and it served me up a Cadillac. I'm like, this is just so bizarre. Now, what if our phones read our thoughts and just knew that I was thinking about a Cadillac, or it knew me better that I didn't really want a Cadillac. Obviously, I didn't want a supercar. So it knew my thoughts and it gave me appropriate advertising. Like, is that what mind reading is going to be used for? Literally perfect advertising, perfect economics. That is so depressing. And the question is, would you buy the newest smartphone if it packaged itself as a mind reader? UFOs have been around for a long time, arguably thousands of years, and they've been denied by the government for as long as people can remember. If you claim to have seen a UFO in the 70s, you were like ridiculed by your local newspaper as the town kook. And now the government just admits that, yeah, they're real, and yeah, we lied. Okay, so if you found out in 10 years that our phones had been listening to us the entire time, like, obviously it's true, and people are so dang gullible that all these companies had to do was lie to us. They just had to say, no, you're crazy. Your phone's not listening to you. Eventually, they're just going to admit, like, yeah, it was. So, if one day our phones can read our minds, and I'm not saying I know how that's going to work, but I am saying that AI is going to allow superhuman processing in a way that a human's never going to understand, but the results will be there. If we can control something with our minds, surely there is some sort of translation, some sort of communication between thought and output. If our thoughts can be used as inputs, maybe one day our phone's going to be able to measure that input and produce an output. If one day that's possible and they market it up, the iPhone 21X, whatever they want to call it that day, all new mind reading capabilities, send a text with your mind. I'm sure they're going to admit that, yeah, for years now, we've been listening to you, but advertising, we couldn't get the clearest signal. So now it knows exactly what you want at all times. Okay, the question, I'm sorry for badgering on about this. would you buy the newest phone knowing it could do that? There's going to be like 80% mass adoption. People are going to line up for the newest phone no matter what. They will sign away their privacy because a lot of people are not critical thinkers. They're not critical thinkers, so they don't think it's a problem that a company would sell you something that takes away all privacy. And they're not critical thinkers in the sense that, what do they have to hide? Like, that's the argument. It's like, well, whatever, let it read my thoughts. It'll know me better. It'll help write emails better. And I just want to know, like, what side are you on? Like, will there even be dumb technology? Okay, yes, there will be, because theoretically, mind reading technology is only going to be available in the most expensive phones, and you can just get a phone from a different company that doesn't read your mind, something to that extent. I don't think there's any way I would ever let a phone read my mind, or just any technology read your mind. Like, that's so invasive. It feels so wrong. And I want to know, like, there's a couple of different thoughts here. Let me write them down so I don't forget. Okay. One troubling thing is the idea of intrusive thoughts. We don't always have thoughts that, first of all, we don't know where our thoughts come from, so that's probably a big thing. You could think of them as instinct. Like, fire is beautiful. I'm sure somewhere we have the thought of, like, oh, let me touch this, and then, when we're children, we learn, ouch, that's not good, we don't touch that. But you have to learn your lesson first. So maybe instincts come to us as thoughts, like the instinct to run. Maybe we don't perceive that as a thought, but we perceive it as feelings in our body, and it's sort of an amalgamation, a combination of thought and feeling, and it's kind of hard to determine what's what. And when you meet someone you're interested in, and people describe that as having butterflies in their stomach, that sort of playful anxiety, I think, is the same idea, that you have thoughts and you have emotion and you can't really parse them, but they're both present. Do you want something that can read your instincts even though you didn't consciously want those instincts to be present? Like, intrusive thoughts are a real thing, that, like, oh, what if I'm driving on the highway and I swerved into the wall? People have those thoughts. That's a real thing. Like, you look over a ledge, what if I jumped? Now, I'm not saying you thought it was a good idea to jump, but that's why they're called intrusive thoughts, because they just show up. Do you really want something reading those? You don't even know where they come from, and now you're going to be responsible for that output? I've seen some, scientific theories on why intrusive thoughts happen, and they could be a defense mechanism to make us realize the situation that we're in. You look over a ledge, you get the thought, hey, what if I jump? And that's not to encourage, that is to get you to realize where you are. And if you did jump, something bad would happen. You get the instinct, the thought to jump, and your conscious mind is now aware of that possibility, and your conscious mind is able to take the intrusive thought, harmonize it with reality, and reject it. That would not be a good thing to jump. You do not want to crash your car at high speeds, but you need to know, probably biologically, evolutionary, that crashing at a high speed would result in a bad outcome. So the intrusive thought is there to help you stay safe, essentially. Do you really want something to measure those thoughts that don't come from your conscious mind? Maybe they're subconsciously there as a part of some calibration system. Like, hey, what if I did this? What if I did that? What if I touched that? What if I jumped over? You get what I'm saying? Like, when I heard that maybe it was from Elon Musk, or maybe it was just on the concept of self-driving cars, and that, oh, you'll be able to drive the car with your mind one day. I'm like, well, who thinks that's a good idea? What if you had an intrusive thought and the car thinks that you thought it because you wanted it? Like, oh no, I don't want this. Isn't that what the whole idea of discipline is, and meditation, in the sense that you become aware of your thoughts and you don't let them control you? You might be really anxious. You might want to move. You might want to scream, but you meditate. You let the waves of thoughts roll over you, wash over you. Discipline comes from doing something you don't want to do, or rather, not doing things that you think you want to do. If you let our thoughts have any real signal into reality, that's just a recipe for disaster. Like, you want to play video games or you want to eat fast food, but consciously you have to say, no, I'm not going to do that. What if you were driving your Tesla in 2035 and you had the thought, oh man, McDonald's would be nice right about now? And instead of saying, like, no, I have food at home, what if your car just took you to McDonald's because it saw your thoughts? Now, maybe it would see your thoughts directly after saying, no, I better do this at home. Like, acting on a thought is so anti-human because we don't act on all our thoughts. So why would anything try and read our thought? Why would... Now, I sound like a crazy person because technically right now there's really no reason to be worried about mind reading. But at the same time, they're clearly talking about that and being able to image what we think. And I guess I could have researched it and tried to understand it better, but like there's a Twitch streamer who plays video games with her mind. She has all these wires and sensors hooked up to her head, and she's able to use the controller based on brain inputs. And I've always wondered, like, does she have to think, jump, attack, dodge? Does she have to like think those words? Or does she have to instinctually think those things and then the output knows what the input was? Like if you saw something knee high level and you needed to jump over it, like how do you map that action to a button, to a thought? Like you have to, when you want to jump with Mario, do you think jump? Like how do you know to press the jump button with your thumb? And can you like replace the action of pressing it with your thumb with just your mind, and then the controller would know what you wanted to do? But then the other thing is like accidental inputs. If you thought jump, but you didn't press the button with your controller, you wouldn't jump. But if you thought jump with your mind, would the controller move automatically in this new world where like we're no longer able to make mistakes with our thoughts because they're going to be connected to something real? That's what's just so troubling about why would anyone press forward with this technology. Now, maybe I have a gigantic blind spot and I'm just not thinking of why it would work out. Like maybe people have already had these conversations and they're like, oh no, it would work like this. There would be some sort of acceptance function where you have to confirm, but then it's like, just type it out with your hands. Like, how would it, why would anyone want that? I get it for people with disabilities, but it's just, it seems like that humanitarian effort is just a backdoor to get to the rest of society. The Trojan horse, if you will. And then the other thing I'm curious about, and Joe Rogan actually brought this up, the people he was talking to didn't give it a very, what's the word, college try. They didn't humor him, but I was curious. If we knew our thoughts were being monitored and I could read your thoughts and you could read mine, would that then allow us to control our thoughts better? Like, is the only reason we don't have control of our thoughts right now because we don't need to? Like, if you knew you ultimately had no privacy, everyone could know what you were thinking, would you evolve a way to block out harmful thoughts? Not even harmful thoughts, just thoughts. That is so dystopian. And it made me think of being a kid and, you know, you're growing up. Your parents usually know when you're lying, and then maybe they let you get away with the lie, and maybe you're able to see in their eyes that they know you're lying, but they don't want to call you a liar, and you get away with it. Hey, did you eat that candy bar? And you say no. And they look at you. They're trying to get you to tell the truth. They don't really know how to deal with that situation at the moment, so they just like let you lie. Like that's a pretty formative part of being a kid. And realizing that, oh, I can lie. Like that my parents don't always know what I'm thinking. And hey, did you eat that cookie? And you're like, no, I didn't. I swear I didn't eat the cookie. and maybe they call you a liar and you're like, no, it wasn't me. And it's like absolutely heartbreaking. Someone thinks that you lied when you didn't. And it takes a lot of development to be like, what are you talking? I didn't do that. Stop blaming me. Like, get off my back, man. You can't read my mind. You don't know what happened. And like, what if you were a kid, like 7 years old, and you realized your parents could read your mind and that there was no privacy left? You could shut your door, but they could still hear you. They still knew what you were thinking. Like, that literally gives me so much anxiety, and that sounds like the scariest thing you could ever imagine, that all your privacy is gone. I don't know any synonyms for privacy, but there's no like safe spot. There's no desolate location just for yourself. Even your thoughts are monitored. Like, your own brain, your own conscious brain isn't alone. You have no more alone time. That is absolutely terrifying. And it scares me as an adult. I wonder how traumatic that would be for children, for a child's brain. I'm talking about the brain, not necessarily the soul of the kid, but for a brain trying to navigate the world to realize it doesn't have any privacy, to literally always feel like they're being watched. Like, isn't that some sort of schizophrenia? And like, I don't want to speak out of place. I'm not trying to label it as something, but like, isn't that a breeding ground for instability? To feel like you're always being watched, like to feel like you're not safe within your own thoughts. It's so dark. And I'm like, if all it takes is like an hour of thinking when it comes to the idea of mind reading, why are they pursuing reading our thoughts at all? Like, it's just, I don't understand the pursuit of technology when the downsides are so clear. Let me say that I do believe in destiny in some sense. I think nurses were destined to be angels, to be helpful, to help those in need of help. I think teachers were probably destined to be teachers. I think soldiers are the soldier warrior archetype. I don't think the average person could become a UFC fighter. I think UFC fighters are the modern day manifestation of a really old archetype. Those people you see fighting are fighters. They're the warriors. I think destiny exists, but I also don't apply it to myself very much. Like, I don't think I'm destined or was destined to have a YouTube channel where I talk about technology and that I should be the voice to damper any exploration. Like, just because I don't like where society is going in terms of exploiting this new powerful technology, like, I don't think I'm special. I don't think I was like born to speak out on these issues. Like, do whatever you want. Like, I can't stop these people, and I don't feel the need to try. But I do think there are people who feel the need to try. Does that make any sense? I guess what I'm saying is, like, don't think of me as some sort of preacher that, oh, technology is evil and they're going to do bad things with it and mind reading is the end of times. And it is how I feel. This is not, what we're doing is not good, but I'm not trying to persuade anyone. Like, it's just more of a commentary. And, if someone ever asked me, like, oh, what do you, they put a microphone on my face and I said, like, what do you think about what Microsoft is doing with their new device that you can wear around your neck that reads your thoughts, and you can get different apps like Uber and a grocery store app and Amazon app and anything you ever think of, it'll be yours within an hour. And they asked me, like, oh, what do you think of that? I'm like, what are you asking me for? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't feel like I'm the voice for other people. Let me just get that really clear. Like, I feel strongly that I just have a personal opinion and that I'm not speaking for anybody else. Just want to make that clear. But oh my God, it's so terrifying. And you know what else is terrifying? I remember, I think it's probably a couple years ago now, Elon Musk speaking about Boston Dynamics and their robots. And he said something that I still haven't understood to this day. But of course, I've never done more research into it because I think that some sort of uncertainty is the fun of life. I grew up before Google, and if you had thoughts and questions and inquiries, you just didn't know the answer. And like that was okay. So what Elon Musk said was that one day you'll need a strobe light to see the robots move, to see Spot run, so to speak. And I think he was referring to them moving so fast that the only way you would be able to see them physically is with the strobe light effect. That like our brains would not be able to pick up the amount of frames per second that this thing is able to move, and that a strobe light would hit it you know, every second and you'd be able to see it then. Now, I don't know if that's what he meant. I think that's what he meant. But I've always wondered, like, why? Like, why would he say that? How would they be able to move so fast? Like, what science and what physics would be able to make that possible? Is it just the idea of, like, a spring? Like, or, like, maybe gunpowder? How, if you shoot a gun, you can't see it shoot, but if you slow it down in slow motion, you'd be able to see the mechanism that allows it to work. And, like, yeah, same idea of a spring. If you had a spring-loaded mechanism, it just like pops basically faster than you can process. But again, if you slowed it down, you'd be able to see it. So would these robots move that quickly because of simple designs like that, like spring-loaded feet that would allow them to leap? That's the other thing, is like I don't understand how they'd be able to move that fast and be in control of it. Like, is it going to be like Spider-Man? Is it going to be like a spider that they'd be able to leap from here to here, like before you can really understand what they're doing? And I guess I sort of understand that for something their size, they have a lot of power, a spider does, for its size, but these robots are huge. They weigh a ton, probably not literally a ton, but they weigh a lot. How could you move something that big at some sort of super speed? Like, it doesn't really make any sense to me. And like, a spider jumping really fast onto a wall doesn't put a hole in the wall because its mass doesn't have enough inertia to really affect a human-sized world. If you had a robot that moves so fast you needed a strobe light to see it, wouldn't it just crash and break everything it jumped into? Like, I don't, what's he talking about? Like, where's it going to move so fast that you're not going to be able to see the outcome of it? Like, it doesn't, I don't know what he meant. And again, maybe I could have looked it up, but I don't know. And also, I get the idea of leaping, but are these robots going to continue to move like a human? Like, left leg, left arm, right arm? Like, how would you be able to, let me put it this way. I understand the idea of a spring and a leap and explosive momentum, but how would you get it to move its arms back and forth at super speeds? Like, what, isn't that just an axle? And like, if you moved a heavy weighted shoulder joint, like if you created an artificial shoulder joint and you moved it super speed, like, wouldn't it just break off? Like, what does he know and what don't I know? Okay, this is a really stupid conversation because I don't know what I'm talking about. Sorry, everyone. Okay, maybe we can talk about this really quick. The idea of AI regulation and the push for AI regulation. We need to keep society safe. We need to get these companies in line. Didn't Sam Altman talk in front of Congress recommending AI regulation? And I suppose I was on their side. I'm like, yes, AI should be regulated in some sense. Like, this technology is way too powerful for everybody to have. But then I heard the argument, what is currently legal that needs to be made illegal? Like, what regulation of AI do you need that doesn't already exist under law? Like, if you talk about, what if somebody was able to steal your voice and your face even, and then they call your great-grandmother and they ask for a bunch of money? Like, identity theft, voice theft, all these things, that needs to be regulated. But that stuff is already illegal. Like, you can't impersonate somebody else by law. So why would AI need to be regulated? I think that's a pretty good argument. Like, a lot of the crimes that AI would commit are already, they're not sanctioned. You can't, if you used AI to hack a computer or something along those lines, well, that's probably already illegal. Like, it's already wrong to do. And that is a good argument against AI regulation. Like, we don't need it. It's all the things that people would want to do on the negative side of things are already labeled crimes. However, I do think the ease of access to crimes should be reconsidered in the modern day. If you wanted to hack somebody in 1995, you probably had to be really specialized. You probably had to have a lot of custom equipment, and you had to really want to steal someone's identity. With AI, it's almost become too easy to steal someone's identity. And I think that ease of access is a problem. Like, I'm not American, so please don't take whatever I'm about to say as like an actual opinion. This is really just a thought. Guns probably weren't a problem or are not a problem when they're difficult to get. But when you sell them at like Walmart, and so, I don't know, maybe they're not at Walmart, but I know they are at like department stores and stuff. Like, it's not that hard to find a gun in America to purchase. That's when it becomes a problem, the ease of access. AI is too strong and too easy to use that I think even though the crimes that they would theoretically commit are already crimes, I think giving people access to these crimes, access to this technology that can cause harm is just, I don't know. You know, maybe I don't agree with, I don't know. What do you think? On a less serious note, I think this is the same argument as AI art and why people are so against it. And I still see it a lot online. People hate AI art and their arguments are just so awful. They don't make any sense. The one they always come back to is it's stealing. And then the reply is, well, it's not stealing unless you think every human artist also steals. And then the kicker, the rebuttal, is that no, it takes a human a long time. It takes a lot of effort to learn from other people and to develop your own art. So it doesn't matter what inspiration you took because it was hard for you to do. It took effort. It's all some sort of the same idea where the effort it takes to do something determines society's view on how we should treat it. AI art is too easy to make now, therefore it's bad. It's stealing, even though humans already do exactly what the AI does. Guns are too easy to access, therefore they're bad. Makes a bit of sense. Voice cloning is way too easy to access, therefore it's bad, even though it's already a crime to steal someone's identity. Like, I guess whatever that argument is, you could call it gatekeeping, even though some gates are much more seriously impactful. I'm talking like weapons versus art. But it's all the same argument that it comes down to effort. And, you know, if you had a bunch of background checks and no criminal record, sure, you could own a gun. And if you took years studying how to draw art, you could take inspiration from anything and it's not stealing. But as soon as something is done very quickly, then it's a problem. The funniest thing about people against AI art, to me at least, is that like they complain to other people, other users, other customers, rather than the companies themselves or big corporations. Like, I don't know. It's just, like, you know, there are probably 7 and 8-year-olds right now using AI art generators. Imagine making fun of them and telling them what they did isn't good, or is it? Imagine like berating an 8-year-old for using an AI art generator. They're gonna have no idea what you're talking about and why you don't like their pictures. Maybe you can explain to them that it's not right for you to call yourself the artist. You should always be upfront that the AI made it. I think that's true. But to say it's not real art or to say it's stealing, the little kid's gonna be like, what are you talking about? And then once that generation grows up and they're the teenagers chronically online, so in like 10 years, I don't think there's gonna be anyone against AI art. Or at least the people who are against AI art are not going to make any sense. Like, it's just so, it is such a losing battle. It's like already been lost. Like, maybe this is a bad comparison, but it's just what came to my mind. You have people who learn to fight with spears and bows and arrows, and then people came along with guns. And who won? The people with the guns. So it would be like the people using bows and arrows, like habitually complaining that other people had guns and that they were cheating and that whatever, and that they're not real fighters unless you fought like us with bows and arrows. And it's like, yeah, maybe, but guns exist. So why don't you try using a gun? Like, complaining about how other people do things is so silly. It's already a lost fight. You already lost. Like, Spartan warriors coming up against some machine guns. Doesn't matter how sick the Spartan warriors are, they're not going to win. They've already lost. What are you complaining about? Like, what? It doesn't, like, it. My brain does not compute that ability to not just losing a fight, having lost the fight. The fight's over. AI exists, and it can create arguably better art than you within seconds. What are you complaining? Like, it's over. It's Jover. Like, why? I don't know. Is it a sore loser mentality that I don't like? Maybe that's it. Like, oh, you only won because you used this strategy. That strategy's not the way you're supposed to play the game. Well, yeah, okay, maybe, but you can't stop other people from using that strategy, whether that's like chess or literally any sport or any game. There's always like a meta, and you can complain against the meta, but you can't stop other people from doing it. So you have to do it too, and even if you don't like doing it. Oh, okay, maybe that's another thing I don't like, is that people who hate against AI art, like, just have clearly never used it. And maybe that's why their arguments make no sense, is because you can just tell. Like, picture somebody complaining about your favorite food and then them describing that food, and you're like, wait, that's not what the food, like, that's not how it tastes. That's not the texture of the food. That's not even how we create the food. Like, what are you complaining about? What? I'm talking to nobody. I'm sitting here alone in a room. I love any of you that are listening. Please don't take what I say too seriously, because again, it's just me here. There's no feedback. So this is just an exercise in, we're going to call it modern day self-help therapy. Speaking to the internet, maybe it's like putting a message in a bottle, throwing it into the sea. You hope it washes onto the shore of someone else, and maybe we become quantumly entangled in some weird way. Anyways, that's it for today. I hope you're doing well. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Peace.